So why should you even care about increasing your church's missions? I mean, people have good reasons not to be engaged in missions. After all, every dollar that goes to missions is one less dollar in your budget. You have enough problems paying your bills, so sending money away doesn't seem like really good stewardship. And I get it, you're busy. You're the pastor, you're the youth pastor, and every 3 or 4 weeks you get to be the kids pastor as well. You're a hospital visit person, the only one on your team. You are the counselor and the counselor and the counselor. You work for the police as a chaplain when they need it, and they always need it when you don't need it. Your wife, well, she leads the choir, the kids' choir. She does a Christmas production. She cleans the bathroom. And between the two of you, you're both coaching Little League Baseball. You don't have time for one more thing. And maybe you're okay with missions, but you wouldn't say it out loud, but you think about it in your head every now and then. Missions is okay, but really, world missions, I mean, isn't America messed up enough? Shouldn't our focus be on our own communities first, and shouldn't that take priority? Maybe you've had a bad experience with a missionary, so it's kind of clouded your opinion. I understand, missions is difficult, it's complicated, and you're an overworked pastor who has to deal with that, and it's just one more thing. If that's how you feel, just hang with me for a few minutes. And usually during this kind of presentation, there's an agenda. Don't worry, I'm not trying to get you to support a specific missionary project. At the end, I'm not going to take an offering or take pledges. But I do have a personal reason for challenging you to give more to missions. You see, I'm challenging you because I've met some people. I want you to increase your church's missions giving because I've met Magda. Magda was an Iranian Christian who was tricked into marrying a Muslim man when he pretended to accept Jesus Christ. Once married, he beat her repeatedly and tried to force her to become a Muslim. After their daughter was born, he filed for divorce in Iran. Islamic law says the child belongs to the father, so he gave Magda an ultimatum. Convert to Islam, marry me as a Muslim, or lose all access for the rest of your life to your child. She chose Jesus. In over a decade, when the last time I spoke to her, she'd only briefly talked to her child once. Iran kicked her out of the country for preaching the gospel. Today she lives in Turkey and pastors the largest church of Iranians in the world with over 700 people. I had the honor of giving her a Farsi Fire Bible. We do missions because Magda needs us. We need to give to missions more because I met Pastor Daniel in Tanzania. His family lives in a 6x10 hut. He's pastored for 15 years through persecution, personal attack, and demonic activity. His church has 9 members. Their building is completely unfinished. His offerings every week average $5. He didn't have enough money to send his child to school, but he has repeatedly turned down opportunities to go to easier assignments and pastor at a larger church. He said to me, who else will come to this place? God placed me here. He hasn't moved me. We do missions because that level of sacrifice demands our sacrifice. We need to give more to missions because of Morgan. Morgan's a 16-year-old girl who believes God's called her to Africa. At the age of 8, she started working towards getting to Africa, even preaching in our children's church about her call to missions. She's going to be an Arkansas Assemblies of God missionary someday. And you need to develop a strong missions church so that when she comes, it'll be easy for her to raise her money. She'll need your help. Increasing missions giving is not about plaques on the wall or winning contests. It's not about seeing our names in the Gleaner or at the top of a list. It's about the Magdas, the Daniels, and the Morgans of our world. But it's also about Ahmed. He's a member of the Rashida people. He's never heard the name of Jesus. He needs a live-dead missionary to go to it. It's about Simone. She's being forced to work as a slave prostitute in France. She needs a Project Rescue missionary to go and tell her Jesus will set her free. It's about Ryan, a homeless drug addict who doesn't believe he'll ever be able to change and he needs a Teen Challenge missionary to tell him that Jesus changes everything. Ahmed, Simone, and Ryan, and a whole bunch of other lost people are trapped in sin and darkness. But I believe there's hope for Ahmed, Simone, and for Ryan. I believe the same God that saved you can and will save them. I believe with Paul in Romans that everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be what? Saved. God's hand of power is not restricted. His salvation is for all people. But I also believe what Paul said following that. How can Ahmed, how can Simone, how can Ryan call on the one they have not believed in? And how can they believe it if they have not heard? And how can they hear without someone preaching to them? And how can anyone preach unless they are sent? No one will hear unless we send someone to them. Giving more to missions is about more people in heaven and less people in hell. That's the bottom line. So your decision not to support missions at some level is a decision that you are comfortable with more people in hell. So let's jump into some practical ways to increase churches' missions giving. Number one, lead your church's missions program. John Maxwell said it, and it's true in missions. Everything rises and falls on what? Leadership. If you want to see an increase in missions giving, if you want your church to build a missions culture, you have to lead it. It's not a missionary's responsibility. You can't just bring one in and it'll change everything. It's not the district's responsibility. It's not a committee's responsibility. It's your responsibility. You determine how involved your church will be in missions. And as the leader, you lead in giving. Don't ask people to give money to something you yourself won't be generous with.
That's right.
When Pastor Rod asked me to take missions, he was clear. He said, Randy, understand this. This is an assignment that comes with a price. I'll never forget the conversation. You can't ask people to give to something that you yourself won't give to, and to give generously. You give first, and then ask them to join you, not give in spite of you.
Right.
Leading in missions means you give people a chance to give in missions. Don't be afraid to give people a chance to give, and then expect for your church to support. Believe He will put it in their hearts, and watch as people surprise you. A.V. Murphy was a member of our church. She was a little old lady with a husky country accent. She was country before country was cool. She was old school. She was a widow on fixed income. You'd look at her and say, no way she would give any money to missions. During a service, she heard about a group of kids in Kenya who are forced to have church underneath a tree no matter the weather. It cost $3,500 to build a children's church structure for this family. Weeping, A.V. came in with a check for $3,500 to build a church in Africa, a children's church for kids, in Engineer, Nairobi, Kenya. Listen, as long as God has a heart for lost people, and He does, God will put it in other people's hearts to make a difference.
That's right.
How dare we stop God's work in someone's life because we are afraid to ask them to give? Hey, I believe this, the law of the harvest. Could it be that we've robbed people's blessings by never giving them an opportunity to step out in faith? Number two, strategically schedule missions opportunities. There on your handout, you'll see there's a lot of blank space and areas. This is just for you to take notes. If some of this speaks to you, great. The key word is strategic. If you want to see growth in your giving and develop a missions culture, you're going to have a strategy. A haphazard approach to missions, like only having a missionary speak when you're on vacation, or when you have something else going on, that's not strategic. It requires planning and scheduling. And schedule mission opportunities 6 months and even to a year in advance. Trust me, the missionaries will actually appreciate that. Rather than calling on Tuesday and saying, hey, do you have Sunday night free? Strategic means balanced. Different people are attracted to different missions opportunities. Some people are excited about kids ministry. Some people are excited about church planting. Some people are excited about feeding programs. Some people, God has placed Africa in their heart. Some people, God has placed Teen Challenge. Some people, God has placed China. And giving people multiple options to give where God has placed that love and desire in their hearts throughout the years is just smart. It increases capacity and it increases the opportunity for people to be able to follow the Lord's direction and achieve the very thing God placed inside of them. So here's some nuts and bolts suggestions on how to develop a strategy in the local church. So here's how First NLR, First Assembly, works in every one of our campuses. We have 3 primary ways that we have missions income at our church. First, every month we move a percentage of the general fund to missions. Some churches do 10%, some do 5%. I know there are a couple churches that do actually more than that. From that, we fund all our missions expenses. So this last week, we were in the Dominican Republic. Those expenses were taken from that transfer. That way, Pastor Rod can stand in front of a group of people and say, every dollar you give today is going to go to whatever the offering is. We're not taking a percentage out to cover stuff. That's because we're covering it from that other area. Secondly, we take an offering for a missions project every month. And I think you got a second handout that actually has the list of this year's missions offerings and then last year's missions offerings so that you can take a look at it and just kind of see. From that, you see that balanced approach. You see humanitarian, church planting. Our church is really committed to Project Rescue and to Fire Bible and clean water. Those are things our church resonates with, so you'll see those repeated throughout the year. You'll see a diversity of unreached people groups, as well as Bible training for places that are more developed. You'll see different parts of the world through that. That is not haphazard. That is strategic decisions and prayerful talking to the Lord to guide us. We only take 12 special offerings a year. Pastor Rod has committed that to our church. Now, he's open to the Holy Spirit. We're open to him, and there are exceptions, but it's obvious to God and to the people when that happens. The offering is usually the first Sunday of the month. And again, I put you those handouts on, or those things on your handout. The last income stream is weekly missions giving. We challenge every person to give something to missions every week. This weekly giving is how we support our missionaries and other missions expenses that come along the way. There are needs on the field, there are surprises, things happen, and people need money. That's what those things are from. I actually placed a sample pledge card that we used in 2016. The top part was the theme for missions, and then the bottom part was the actual thing on the back that they turned in for pledges. We take an offering we don't take an offering for monthly support. We support our monthly missionaries through the weekly, and some people it's monthly missions giving, budgeted into their process. Pastor Rod suggests we start at $5 a week. So my wife and I, we've just crossed 15 years on staff at First NLR. 15 years ago, we put $5 a week for every member of our family in for missions. That was our commitment. We had a child along the way, so we had to up our missions pledge. Every year we budgeted, and Pastor Rod would say, this year would you just do more? And we just did more. We actually talked about having another child. Honey said, I don't think we can afford the missions pledge. So we increased it. And I'll just tell you, 15 years later, if you had told me then what we would be giving every week to missions, I'd said you're crazy. But last year was a difficult year. Our kids turned 16. She's driving a car. Our expenses they're huge right now. So this year we just increased $2 per person or family. That's all that's our budget, but we still moved up. Right. But you keep moving that up every week over 15 years. It's an incredible opportunity. That's what we ask people to do. Just move it up. Just move it up a little bit more. I challenge you to do some version of this plan for you and your church. Strategic planning of your missions program will ease the pressure you have in coming up with funds, and it'll help you build some momentum. Now, we've discovered that it's often through missions that people first give money to First Assembly. You think it'd be the opposite. They'd support what you're doing, and then they'll jump on board with missions, but that has not been our experience. People give first to missions, and then they give to us. Lost people who come to our church give to missions before they give to the general fund. And once they start giving, guess what they do? They keep giving. Giving people an opportunity to give to missions won't hurt your general fund. It actually might increase it. It will actually help. Now with some specifics in communicating an offering. So we're going to do something today. We're going to actually show a video from a few months ago where an offering Pastor Rod took here at church for a project. Now, I want you to grab your pen before we do it. I'm going to give you some words to write down on your handout. Because this is sort of, it's not a script, but this is pretty standard, and then you can watch for it as we watch. The first thing is, he will set the tension and the context. Tension and context. We're going to learn about the place. The second key word here is scripted. You'll look, he is not winging the story. He knows what he's about to say, so he gets the details right. We'll talk about that in a minute. Third, there will be pictures. We are in a visual society, and pictures are important. And fourth, we use the phrase giving targets. We help people understand. So you can watch along the way, watch this video. This one's actually a little longer than normal. This one's about 7 minutes, so I may cut it off in a little bit. Typically that's actually much shorter than that, but this project had some unique pieces to it. The Lord really opened up a miracle for us. And so you can watch and look for those things. Go ahead, guys.
Told you a few minutes ago that about once a month we share a project with you, and I want to do that today. The Dominican Republic is an island in the Caribbean, famous for beautiful beaches and wonderful climate. We've worked for several years with schools on that island. Our missionary, Chad Nelson, helps lead 16 schools with almost 7,000 students. It's been an outstanding partnership. Many of our students have graduated, gone to college. About a year ago, Chad asked us to pray for a special need for his students. And if you remember last year's missions experience, it was one of our prayer focus. They had a crisis of dirty, contaminated water that made life incredibly hard, even dangerous for many on the island. Students were missing classes because they were contracting diseases from the water. It's hard to imagine on a tropical island surrounded by water, but access to clean water is difficult and expensive. The water is contaminated with chemical and diseases. In fact, just a few years ago, tens of thousands of people died because they contracted cholera from diseased water. People die every year because of what they drink. So we started praying with Chad and working on finding a solution. And the result of your prayers is a unique opportunity. You may be familiar with Sawyer water filters. If you're a hunter or a camper or a hiker, you've heard of Sawyer. And Sawyer has agreed to partner with us in this project. Sawyer makes a filtration system that can be attached to a bucket and that cleans water that passes through it. It's relatively inexpensive. It's very effective. February, Pastor Randy and Aaron Stone went to the Dominican Republic to test it out, to test the plan. And while there, they met people like Lisa Marie, a 12-year-old student who lives with her grandmother. The two of them grow fruit in the backyard and bake bread to sell on the streets. Their only access to water is a small creek that runs through their property, but it's filled with trash and waste, so they can't use it to drink. When Pastor Randy was there, he took a picture of what they were using for water. Lisa Marie and her grandmother have to buy bottled water. And you say, well, that's no big deal. I drink bottled water. Over half their income is used to buy 4 to 5 gallons a week. Adiana is 13 years old. Her family's lived on the same piece of land for 50 years. Several years ago, the government put in pipes to bring them water, but the water was contaminated, made everyone sick. Adiana and her family can only afford to spend about $4 a week buying water for them all to share, and it's not enough. And the saddest part is there's a spigot right outside their house that they can't use. And so we gave Adiana and her family one of the water purification kits. Pastor Randy and Chad filled the bucket with the bad water. They attached the filter, and then they took a glass, poured water into it, And they lifted it to their mouth to drink, and Adiana's grandmother screamed at them and said, "Don't drink it, you'll be sick." And they drank the water. They drank the water, and the whole family gathered around and looked at them to see when they'd run to the bathroom. But after watching and seeing they didn't get sick, the whole family began to drink water. For you, that's simple technology. For them, it's a life-giving miracle. Through our partnership with Sawyer, we're able to provide a family with a water filtration system with the filter, lack of a better word, but tuned for the diseases and contaminants that are there. I looked up the filter last night on Amazon. You buy the same system on Amazon for $129.19 for clean water. Now that's a pretty great deal, isn't it? $129 for a whole family to get clean water. Because of our partnership with Sawyer, we are able to provide that same filter that's $129 on Amazon for $18.52. That's pretty awesome. That's pretty incredible. And that water filter will last 10 years. A 10-year water filter, a 5-gallon bucket to hold the water, and information about what it means to follow Jesus.
Many of these students, he went on to share a little bit about it, but did you see all those pieces that were in place here? Set the tension and context. Don't assume people know where everything in the world is. Create the need, share the fact that cholera was causing destruction. We tell scripted stories about real people who actually exist, and we show their pictures on the screen. And then we give people giving targets. He shared how much did it cost to provide a bucket and filter? $18.52. And over the next few minutes, he actually went down and broke it down even more. $18.52 was one bucket. Then he gave what it would cost to provide an entire classroom of students. He multiplied that times 30 and gave some of you could provide a whole classroom. He actually put a big goal out there and said, we have these schools, the cost for a school would be this amount of money. He gave people giving targets and pieces for them to be able to make their giving towards. So we had checks for $18.52. We had checks for people who gave money to provide for a class. We had people who gave for a school. Number 4, when a missionary comes, give them specific assignments when they're with you. When you host a missionary, communicate your expectations. I'm assuming you're telling them the basics about what to wear, how long to speak, and that stuff. But make sure you use this phrase. Here is how you can help me today. Here's how you can move our church forward. And give them that assignment, give them the words to say, and then let that missionary help you move your missions forward. Don't just look at them and say, go do that thing you do. Let them help you. And number 5, say thank you meaningfully and often. Don't take people's missions giving for granted. Pastor Rod over-communicates thanks both from the pulpit and in person. When possible, say thank you in tangible, meaningful ways. We usually pick an amount of money, and for people who give that in the offering, we send a handwritten thank you note or a gift to them. This month was Armenian Fire Bibles. Those gifts go out this week. We handed you a card in front of them. That was actually from an offering, I think, 2 years ago for the Marathi Fire Bible. That's Psalm 1, I think, is it 119:11? I can't remember which one we put on there. Oh, that one. So you say, well, I can't do that. We made those at Walgreens. I made one for all of you this week. It was $30 to give you that thank you note. I think anybody can do it. I brought back from my travels vials of dirt from a church that people have done. I've brought a big rock and busted it up and given out little rocks of people to pray for. I've had kids do coloring pages for me to say thank you. I did a coloring contest in a 3rd grade class with 60 kids, and it cost me $4 in Oreos. It was pretty effective money. Be creative, be simple. If anything, get a card from Hallmark, write a note on it, and send it to them. The point is this: gifts are attracted to gratitude. Saying thank you is a biblical principle. It's also just smart. It reveals the impact and value of people. We've covered a lot of ground. I'm sure you have tons of questions, but Pastor Rod and Pastor Brian are about to come up. If you want to develop a stronger missions giving emphasis, I'm happy to help. Email me. In fact, I've got a Dropbox link set up. It's got 12 months of missions pictures, videos, and stories that you can use to share. I'll send you the link to it. And let me end where we began. Increasing your church's missions giving is about people spending eternity in heaven. It's about Magda, Daniel, Simone, Ahmed, Ryan, and Amy Murphy. And I have to confess to you, I wasn't entirely truthful at the front. I do have an agenda. I told you there was a 16-year-old girl named Morgan who wanted to be a missionary to Africa. I wasn't up front. Her name's Morgan Jumper. And that's her with her pastor, Pastor Daniel in Tanzania. Please write her name down because in about 5 to 10 years, she's going to call you and ask you for support. I need you to develop a strong missions culture in your church now so that when she comes then, it'll be easy for her to raise her support seed in Africa. Thank you so much.